Welcome to the Republican Professor. This morning we have with us the man behind the Instagram account at Voice of the Second, Dale Fincher.
Good to be with you, Lucas. This is great.
And I'm in frozen California. I'm freezing. I think it's like 60 degrees out there.
Yeah, that is. It's frigid, especially on the wind-blown sweeps of the Golden Gate.
Yeah. I'm surprised the police haven't kicked me out of this spot yet up here in the Marin Headlands doing my podcast. They have come and talked to me a few times, and then I just say, "Is it this San Francisco?" And they say, "No, that's the other side of the bridge." And I said, "Oh, okay. So how do you guys feel about homeless people up here? Are you guys a bunch of Republicans in Marin County?" And then they say, "Oh no, like we like homeless people." And I'm like, "Oh, great. Well, let me continue doing my podcast." And
they're so
and then
kind.
they go, "What's your podcast called?" And I say, "The Republican Professor." And then they're like, "Out, out, out! Is this your crap on the ground? This had better be Democrat crap, because if it's Republican crap, out. That might fly in Fresno, man." Actually, it doesn't fly in Fresno because they're clean in Fresno. Well, anyway, sorry. For those of you listening, my background is the Golden Gate Bridge from the Marin Headlands. So that's a bunch of inside jokes for people that aren't able to see. All right. Well, we have Dale Fincher. Dale, you're joining us from, you want to say what part of the country?
Yeah, Exeter, New Hampshire.
Wow, that was really specific. Wow.
Yes, very specific.
Usually people only give their address, and they don't give the city. They give the zip code, but not the city.
Yes. Oh,
Just
really?
Wow. No.
Well, our zip code's pretty broad. I don't know, but it's on the seacoast. So we moved here. We moved to New Hampshire, moved from Colorado to New Hampshire, 18 months ago.
Cool.
And it's been great. We're 15 minutes from the ocean.
Wow.
And there's so many little small historic towns everywhere.
15 minutes walking or 15 minutes driving?
15, sometimes 15 minutes walking. I literally can walk 7 minutes down the road from where I am and be at a tavern where George Washington stopped to have some refreshment.
Wow,
George Washington.
Cool.
Yeah. And then right around the corner from that is the spot downtown Exeter where Abraham Lincoln spoke at some point. So I feel like the history of everything going on around here makes even what we're talking about feel more significant.
Wow, that's cool. So you are a Second Amendment activist on Instagram. You live in New England now. It's called, is that considered New England, New Hampshire?
Oh yeah.
They call that New England? Okay.
You can't get any more New England than.
Well, I just don't know where New England stops and where it starts. I mean, like, is New York New England?
No, I don't think so.
See, that's what I mean. I don't understand. Is Vermont New England?
I think it is, yeah.
Okay. So you go across the river, it's not New England anymore.
I guess.
Even though York is in England.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly.
They call it New York because it's okay. Don't try to figure it out. Right?
Well, the whole Eastern Seaboard is all named after English, stuff. You can't get away from it.
Or Indians. Yeah.
Or Indians. Yeah.
Or Indians. Yeah.
We can't just give all the credit to the colonialists who.
Yeah. Massachusetts. There's no town in England named after that.
That's an excellent point. Excellent. So what I like about New Hampshire is that it actually is a shire. And
that's cool.
Where hobbits hang out,
So tell us about your approach to defending the Second Amendment advocacy on Instagram, and you can find him on Instagram at Voice of the Second. First of all, tell us about the name Voice of the Second. How did you come up with that name?
Right. I started this over 4 years ago. And when I first started it, I was totally in the closet. It was a secret. I didn't tell people about it, but it was a way for me to start. I felt like I felt like I needed to understand the political climate better on social media, and then offer my voice if I had anything to say. And I wanted to see, do I have anything to say? It's nothing like, it gets really boring sometimes on social media when everybody's just repeating each other and resharing each other. And you could have large accounts, but what they say is just, nah. It's like, it's like cheap breakfast cereal. It's like, okay, yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. I see what you're doing, but you're not advancing the conversation or bringing or helping people reach a level of maturity where they understand their place in as a citizen. So anyway, I started doing that, and the Second Amendment to me has been like one of the clearest litmus tests of whether or not your government values you as a human being and sees you as somebody with moral boundaries. And
moral boundaries. Ooh, good phrase.
Moral boundary, which is really just it's my abbreviated way to say rights. Rights are thrown around so easily.
That's interesting. So you use the boundary language from psychology? Is that right?
Sure.
Oh,
that's right.
That's interesting. Like relationships, yeah, creepy relationships don't respect boundaries. And so that's your intuition about government, is like, this is a creepy relationship.
It is a creepy relationship if they don't respect your natural rights, your moral boundaries. So
you're going to reach people with that insight. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, it's all good.
I was just going to give you a compliment.
I'll pause for that. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Sometimes we talk over each other because of technology. Yeah, the thought I had was, you're going to reach people with that insight, just that word boundary, that you're not, they're maybe not going to reach otherwise, because people that have a lot of trauma or have experienced maybe they don't know what they think about politics, but they've been wounded, right, in their life by harmful or relationships of some kind, and they're not used to thinking of the government as a boundary crosser in a relationship, and that's a new flash of insight for those kind of people.
Yeah,
and they might be really scared of guns. Like, they might think, okay, or maybe they went to a shooting range and it's so loud, it's so jolting to your body. So, and that can feel very traumatic to people that have gone through harmful times. Okay, sorry, that's all I wanted to say.
No, I think that's super important. And the moral boundaries is related more to natural rights rather than just, some sort of contract of you agreeing to do something together, which is a type of boundary. But the Second Amendment is such a strong moral boundary to me, in understanding not just that you are allowed to be empowered, but that other people are not allowed to have certain kinds of power over you. And I find that people understand this. I think the average person understands it when you talk about like domestic abuse. They're like, oh yeah, when the spouse is beating on the other, like you mentioned. And they can't understand it. Many understand it when it's like in a business or even in a church. And I come from also a background of a lot of spiritual organizational abuse, theological abuse. So I understand it keenly, that your right to take up space without others stealing it away from you is a huge empowering moment. And of course, there's deeper views that ground that. But that to me is such an important part of the Second Amendment. So when I come at the Second Amendment, I don't necessarily come to it as a gun guy. I mean, I think firearms are important. I find them interesting, but I'm not in like the gun culture. And there's so much that goes on in gun culture about the new releases of firearms and the big trade shows and the people going out and showing off, that this is what they've been doing at the range. I'm like, I can appreciate that. I totally get it. But that's not what gets me up in the morning. It's the deeper ideas about what it means to be a fully human person on the earth and how that translates to the politics of our country and why these rights are so important for us to preserve. So Second Amendment is in some ways like a conduit into this larger conversation. Yeah. And I'm always keen on pointing out too, I don't think I'm the voice of the second. I'm a voice of the second. And we can all be a voice of the second as we're talking about being an empowered individual in the world.
Right. Okay, so let me get your handle right. Did I get your handle right? What was your handle? Is it the voice of the second, or is it voice
Nope,
of the
just
second?
voice. Yep.
Voice of the second. Okay.
At voice of the 2ND second.
Okay, good. I'm glad I got that right.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Okay. You there in what you just said, there's a few little rabbit trails we could go on.
Sure.
First of all, just affirm for those of you who can't see Dale or maybe don't know him, he is not one of these tactical guys. So for you Second Amendment people, you'll know what that means. If you're not a Second Amendment person yet, or maybe you're on a journey or you're just curious, you wouldn't look at Dale and think he's got the latest gizmos and he's got the magazines and gosh, I guess do people even get magazines anymore? I guess that's kind of 80s. You know, if he goes to the Barnes and Noble, he's not necessarily going right over to Guns and Ammo magazine or whatever.
That's right.
He's not he doesn't go to SHOT Show in Vegas. For those of you who are in the Second Amendment world, you know what that is. It's a trade show. It's a big deal in the Second Amendment community, where you have all the latest gizmos and stuff, and it's pretty big. He's not doing that. He doesn't have his booth up for that. He's a deep person. He's a thinker. He's a feeler. You mentioned your background with organizational abuse, and that's an interesting segue into your Second Amendment activism. So how's that contribute, the organizational abuse that you've experienced? To tell us about what that was, what
Sure.
that looked like
Yeah,
for you.
right. So it had to do with the college that I went to, and which was a deeply fundamentalist Christian campus. And the kind of thought policing that they did there, of course, when you go there, I'm also a deep person of faith. So when I go there, I'm an open, humble person ready to receive. I want to understand the Bible. I want to understand how to live more deeply out my faith. And I want to grow I was a pre-law major, and I eventually went into theater and did those things. So I really just wanted to immerse in Christian thought. But what I discovered was it was a highly regulated community. And certain, ideas were off limits, and where you could go, you always had to sign out, who you could talk to, constantly messages from the front about, association and bad association and good association. And I later realized in the category of, in academics, it's actually called a sociological cult. And that was an organizationally abusive place. And to get out, some people say, well, why didn't you get out? I'm like, that's
right.
Those questions aren't helpful. And anybody who's been in an abusive situation understands that it's like the frog in the pot. It's just a slow boil, and things are telling you things aren't right, but getting out seems more dangerous than staying in. And eventually I got out. Yeah. And I had a lot of healing to do. And I saw more and more through it as time went on. And later, as I was doing nonprofit work, I helped a lot of people get out and process those kinds of relationships and being stuck in those kinds of churches and organizations. So
did that destroy your faith?
For me, no, not at all. And it didn't for me because I was seeking out the true faith rather than seeking out belonging. And that is a major difference of what we even see today, that when your hunt is for belonging to a community or a group is greater than your desire for truth and a coherent life, then you will get sucked into all sorts of movements that are trying to sell you that you can belong. I mean, that's a major emphasis today of the LGBTQ community. I mean, their primary message is belonging. Their primary message is not, how do you live a coherent life? So for me, I was pursuing God because I believed that he would bring the coherence to everything, and so that I could build a life that way.
Say that contrast again: belonging versus
living a coherent life. A coherent life meaning
belonging versus. Okay, go ahead. I'm just trying to repeat that again. Belonging. You said the LGBTQ community, they emphasize belonging. Is that what you said?
That's right.
Belonging versus they're cutting out something.
Yes.
What are they cutting out again?
A coherent life.
Okay, say there's this has something to do with the Second Amendment. I can see where this is. I actually can't see where this is going yet, but that's what makes it so fun and exciting.
There we go. And the Second Amendment is built on the same foundation of a coherent life too. So that's if you read my bio at my account, it says the idea of exploring or understanding and teaching the foundational principles behind the Second Amendment, which are going to apply to everything. But the Second Amendment, again, is just a conduit to move us into this larger world and this larger conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So what's a coherent life? A coherent life says I need to be open to reality at all costs.
I was going to say racism, but okay.
Right. Well, we want to be open to reality.
Homophobia.
Yes, as long as you don't have homophobia, you live a coherent life.
Islamophobia.
You got it.
No, I mean, I think some people listening to this, that's where they go. They're as soon as you mention the LGBTQ and they're thinking, oh no, this guy is Jerry Falwell.
Mm-hmm.
I now know where this guy's coming from. Okay. So what would you say to that? So just address that issue right
I would say you don't know where I'm coming from. So that would be it's so easy to jump to conclusions because we have been programmed in the political discourse to look for the buzzwords and look for the conclusion somebody has and then write them off without understanding how they got there.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was just doing just there.
Yeah.
But okay, let me take this a little bit further though, just and out of compassion for people like that, right? They are coming from they really feel like they're doing the world good, right? The racists are bad, and you just mentioned something about LGBTQ wanting belonging but not being coherent, and
not seeking a coherent life over belonging over a coherent life. That's right.
How is the LGBTQ not coherent? How's that not a coherent life?
Well, the basic one is not allowing our biology to inform our gender. So the idea of biology from a philosophy of science perspective, the idea of biology does not have authority to tell or to inform what my gender may be.
Okay.
So if we
need that for coherence,
you need that you need it for coherence to live a coherent life. If your coherent life is to live according to reality. If you don't want to live according to reality, you can find coherence in other ways, but I think you're just going to keep bumping into reality where the incoherence is, and you either have to ignore it, which is what the Enlightenment did onward, Enlightenment, modernism, postmodernism, or you have to begin wrestling with it and come to terms with it.
That makes sense. I think we see this. Well, everybody, this is not scripted. We don't plan these out. So I just bring people on that I trust to be able to handle this kind of stuff, to make it real. And he can totally handle this. So I have no problem going on these little rabbit trails. I know we will go back to what we were talking about.
We will.
Just chasing this down. Yes. Yeah. So the Biden pick for, excuse me, Supreme Court, Mrs. Jackson, she apparently thinks she's a woman, and Biden thinks she's a woman too.
That's right.
And everybody thinks she's a woman because she is a woman. She's an adult human female, which is what the word means. That's what it means in English.
That's right.
The word, the English language goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. And the word woman is translated into English from other languages, which go back even further. And that's what it means in those languages. And everybody knows this, but we pretend not to know it just for a certain period of time. I mean, I don't pretend not to know it, but she pretended under oath. She pretended not to know what a woman was. And so to me, that's like, maybe that's an example of what you're talking about. Is that a good example? Okay.
I think it's a great example. And it's part of also the postmodern game because we know that words are just utterances. They're just sounds that we make, or just scribblings on a page. But the words also have content to them. They refer to things. So what the postmodern game is, which is critical race theory born out of, and LGBTQ gender theories born out of.
Hold on, Dale. I'm going to pause.
Okay.
Sorry for that. Okay, so you were saying?
Yes, wherever we got cut off. About the words have content to them. They're like little suitcases, and the suitcases have content. What the postmodern does is says that we need to rearrange the content of words, keep the words the same. Don't come up with new words for new concepts. Keep the words the same, but work on smuggling other concepts into the words. And so that's where, you see Mrs. Jackson at. For her to answer that woman means the content that it has always meant, would then contradict and go against the political movement that says we have replaced the content inside of that. But that is incoherent, because whether you say the word woman or not, the content remains. There's still a real world. And that's what I'm after. Because if you can't live a coherent life by corresponding to the real world, then all you're doing is playing the word games. And that's where a lot of people don't mind the word games if it means they can belong to the group, because we feel so alone and isolated and insecure and all those things that make up the frailty of humanity. And so many of us, and I understand it, I'm tempted to move in those directions myself and have found myself in those places in the past. So tempted to move in just for the thumbs up, you did it. You're on the right team. You're on the right side of history. You belong. You're and belonging. Be like, thankful. And it's amazing. We talk about this because I see examples of it. People who have been harmed in some institutions, like the church, they were so zealous, then they were harmed. I have seen it repeated over and over again, where they will then jump into a deeply progressive movement, just as zealous, but the content has changed. Before, you were all for all these conservative values. The next week, you're for all these progressive values, which tells me you weren't after values. You were looking to belong in a place where you can exude your zeal. And I get it, but it's not a coherent life.
Well, and maybe feel safe. Maybe they felt like the conservative, that was your word that you used, or the religious, that was the non-progressive, that was dangerous for them, I guess, because of the abuse that they felt. So what's the character of the abuse? It's some kind of boundary crossing.
It's always, it's boundary crossing, gaslighting. It is getting you to, which is a form of gaslighting, getting you to distrust what seems to be the case as true.
In other words, a philosophy class.
It's a philosophy class, right? But it acts. Abuse acts as a medium between you and reality, and that medium is going to do all the interpreting for you. And that's why the progressive movement, to me, is so similar, has so many of the trademarks as these fundamentalist groups, because there's always a mediator constantly reinterpreting reality, which you are perfectly capable of getting at, because you have a mind and a will and emotions and a soul. But they keep you from getting at that thing so that you will continue to conform to the structure that's been presented to you. Kind of like The Truman Show, if you've watched that movie.
Mm-hmm. So who's the mediator for the progressives?
Well, speaking as a university professor, you would know.
Well, I mean, I think the conservative groups, isn't it like normally a guy or something? It's like a guy, it's a pastor. Or
it's not,
it's a guy, right?
Sometimes there's a big personality, like it could be a big Obama kind of guy, and everybody's got to rally behind it.
So you're saying for the progressives. Okay, yeah.
For the progressive. But I found, in my experience, it was not a guy. My experience was it truly was an institution where a lot of people are coming together within the structure. In some ways, would it be like to be in East Berlin in 1988? Okay.
Yeah.
You're so like, who am I following? I don't know, but I'm constrained.
Oh, okay.
I'm controlled and constrained.
Malformed. It's a malformed structure.
That's
and
right.
keep it. Okay. That I get that. I get that.
And you always know the case because shame usually accompanies it,
Mm.
especially those who are hunting for a place of belonging. It's like, how dare you? Or what kind of person in filth might you be? What kind of sinner might you be? What kind of racist might you be if or a homophobic or bigot if you leave our group? And so you get trapped in it. And you're like, I don't want to be any of those things. It sounds like it's really bad to go out there and I'm going to become a bad person. So I might as well stay.
So the same, yeah, I can now see what you're saying. The same screwed up structure is kind of harmful on the progressive side because it's abusive language if you leave
That's
with
right.
your boundaries. Like if you have your
Okay.
own beliefs that don't match, let's say you do really believe that Miss Jackson up for the Supreme Court is a woman, and you can clearly see she's a woman. And anybody who says, even her, under oath before the Senate Judiciary Committee, that she doesn't know what a woman is so utterly ridiculous to you.
Mhm.
But you might be afraid of leaving the progressive fold because you're going to be called names like it was in 7th grade or something. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, that's what happens.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an emotion. Cult groups like that is an emotionally immature group.
You just
It always
described the
is.
college campuses. If I
Yeah.
were to have this, if I were to have this discussion in campus, there would be a social pressure, an invisible social pressure, almost like a demonic presence,
Mhm.
damping down on the the warm coals of free thought. And everybody has those coals of free thought in their own soul, but
That's right.
the wetness of this weird social pressure always dampens that out in the classroom.
That's
Everybody's
right.
looking around. Can I say this? Can I say what a woman is?
Yeah.
And there's oftentimes there's that one kid that will just say it, and people look at him like they're uncomfortable, but they're not going to side with him publicly, but inside they know he's right.
And they might even have their own personal sigh of relief. I'm glad somebody said it, but I didn't want to put my neck out there.
Yeah, the university is really really kind of an abusive place. It's very toxic. I felt it. I, I felt very panicky that I couldn't leave. Like, this is how I'm going to make my living, and so I have to just get with these people and I have to belong. But the inside voice was, I cannot do that in good conscience because this place is not really even a university anymore. It's a university is dedicated to academic excellence and pursuing truth. We can't even admit the things that are obviously true here.
That's right.
So
That's right.
I mean, I can, but I feel like I get punished
Yeah, you can't
if I
without
do.
consequence. If
Yeah,
somebody
yeah,
says
that's
you're
right.
free to do something, but then they're going to punish you afterwards, it means you're not free to do something.
So, okay, you mentioned going back to the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
You mentioned there are deeper things in the Second Amendment, a deeper philosophy of that. Can you walk us through what that means? How do you interpret the Second Amendment?
Sure.
You want to give us the text of the Second Amendment, and does the text inform how you read it and how you understand it?
It partly does, but I feel like the text is there because of the ideas rather than the ideas are there because of the text.
Okay.
You know, it's so embarrassing forgetting how the Second Amendment begins. For the right of the people to keep and bear arms should not be infringed is the important part. And the first part is about a militia is necessary for a free state. Can you give us the phrase?
A well-regulated militia
There it
being
is.
necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
That's right. So some of that you could say is a practical measure. But the practical measure, in order to have freedom, is grounded in the fact that humans are supposed to have freedom. And that the human, the individual,
that's a starting point.
And the individual, as well as the community, transcends the government. And that the Second Amendment is in place, not for the people, but for the government.
Meaning it gives the government rights, or
it tells the government what they're not allowed to do.
Yeah, it limits them. So it's a boundary.
It's 100% a boundary. So that's what's great about, all laws being written down, is that now they're codified, and people all agree that this is what we're going to follow. But when they are laws written down that correspond to morality, well, it's the morality that informed them. The document just codified them, as we know. So the deeper idea behind the Second Amendment is that the individual person is such a thing of value, of worth, of stature, of place in the world, that no government from the dawn of time to the end of history is allowed to trample on that person with any moral cause. Now that's tricky when you get into the weeds of how do you organize and structure a society. I get that. But don't let the weeds dictate the deeper principle. We need to be continually untangling the weeds so that we can get closer and closer to the principle.
The way you use Instagram is interesting. I've pulled up your account so I can refresh my mind on it. You have.
I'm gonna pull it up too so I can refresh my mind on it.
Okay. Most people don't think of Instagram as a way to reach people with long form discussion or teaching. What you do is your mode of operation is, I'm just going to click on a post. Here's one from March 15th. Remember again what we are fighting for. So you'll have a quote. Sometimes it's longer than that.
Yeah.
So, and it's what are these quotes designed to do?
Well, the quote is trying to get a concept boiled down to a pithy phrase that could be not only remembered, but shared. Because that's what I want. I want people to share the idea and to trigger people into thinking about it. So that's why I love Instagram, is that I love short quotes. Everybody likes short quotes. They put them on their
right.
So we love the pithy phrases. We put them on refrigerators. We put them on our walls. We say them to each other. We love Mark Twain. And so to me, Instagram lends itself, for me, to be able to say and boil down these pithy sayings. And then if you're more interested in what I mean by it and what it could mean for you, we'll jump down into the caption, and I do my best to explain it. I love that the captions
you have
limited.
long captions.
I do.
That's what I was going. So you'll have like captions that one's not too long on March 15th. That's only a couple small paragraphs. But sometimes you'll have like 5 or 6
words or something.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Well, sometimes it appears that you have like multiple paragraphs in it, and it's like an essay in the caption.
Yep.
Okay. And you're using the captions to expand on the quote?
That's exactly right. And that's the whole point of it. It's like, if you want to go deeper, read the caption. But I don't feel like I could just say the quote without explanation. It feels irresponsible to me in the purpose I'm trying to do and educate my fellow citizens and fellow humans to say we can rise up and be more fully human and be leaders in our thoughts and our actions in the society that's gone crazy.
Yeah. I think most people would think of Facebook that way. Like Facebook is for the longer form. Like for example, let's describe Instagram to people, because there's limiting features on all of these platforms. And so the limiting feature on Instagram, at least from my perspective, is like I can push a button. Let me just show you what I'm looking at. I'm looking at this iPad. So I'm looking at your post and I can push this button and I can share that to, it says add post to your story. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just adding it to my story. So now it's on Republican Professor story for 24 hours. And anybody who sees the red circle around the Republican Professor profile picture or whatever, I don't know what it's called, but they'll see that I have a story. They can click on it. And some people have like a million stories, and you're like, okay, a lot of it's political commentary, or sometimes it's cat videos, or sometimes it's like my pet dolphin, look how cute he is. But so that'll be up there for 24 hours, and I can see who looked at that. Right. And it's not very many people for me. It's like, 30 people, maybe. Sometimes it's 2. For a long time, it was 2. And I have a feeling Instagram was suppressing that. I have no idea how they do it, but how can it be 2 for 2 months and then go to 30 all of a sudden?
Yeah.
And it's well known and stay at 30. Yeah. And, so they will, my cat videos will get, I do share some of those. One of the stories I have on there is today is a little chick that has a little flower on his head, like a little baby, I think duckling or something. That'll probably get 40. That'll probably get 40 views or whatever. And then my, if political commentary gets less. These are people that follow me, by the way, so they know where I'm coming from politically. So they like the animals better than the politics.
That's funny.
Yeah. So but my point is that when it gets shared to your story on Instagram, the caption does not go with it.
That's right.
So that's a limiting feature. Does that bother you? Because they will look at it. Okay, tell us.
Partly because when people share it, other people see it, and I get a lot more people following because of it.
Oh, okay. And then so eventually they'll see the captions.
That's right.
Oh, okay, I got you. And then, okay, so they can click. Okay, maybe that's what some people are missing. So they can click the story. They can see the post. When they see the post, they go to your page. So I just clicked through, and then they can see the caption. Now, there's other interesting things about how you use it. You have 18 posts. You've been doing this for 14 years. Or did you say 4 years? 4 years.
4 years. 4 years.
You have 18. You only have 18 posts.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
What's behind that? Well,
the first 9 posts is just a logo. You know how you make a grid pattern?
Yeah.
And whenever my logo has changed, it has evolved. There it is. I post it up. That's what I do.
How long did it take you to do that?
To make the image was really easy. And then you go into a grid app and it makes it into 9 pictures for you. And you just go boom, 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 boom. So it's fast. But because I noticed how Instagram shadow bans, like you said, and people get reported. I've watched the pattern. People will often get reported for things they posted a year ago or 2 years ago, 3 years. And they're like, whoa, this is from a long time ago. Because I think what happens is there's a little army of people out there running around just trying to create havoc and report your stuff. There's also, I think, the bot algorithm is constantly finding new keywords, search words, images, find things that have been popular they didn't like, and they're able to trace it back that you also shared it. And so all of a sudden they have a strike against your account, and then 2 strikes. And I think it's like 3 strikes and I think you get banned, but unless it's something really bad. But I thought with the 9 posts, I only have my last 9 posts. That's it. So when I make a post, when I made my post today, I deleted my 10th post. I don't delete it. I archive it. Pretty soon I'm going to have them all on my website at dalefincher.com. So anybody can scroll through all of the work that I've done here.
Oh, that's good. Okay. I was worried that you're putting all this effort into it. And then I guess my worry was that you change your mind and you're like, that was not a good post. Or,
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, Dale, what are you doing? Okay. That makes sense.
You know, when you put your ideas out there, you do
You've
feel
been
very
so
vulnerable.
damaged by your college experience.
I know. You're right. Instagram reminds me of my college a little bit. Everybody running around reporting each other and sin sniffing, as we like to call it.
Dale, you have this well thought out use of Instagram. Okay, so it's so this is now going to be developed on your website, dalefincher.com. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Dale, I remember you from our time at Biola University. We were both graduate students in the philosophy program.
Over 20 years ago.
It hasn't been that long.
Yeah.
It seems like to me, it seems like 19 max, 19 and a half years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a long time. It's been 20 years ago. Well, actually, yeah, since I arrived, it's going on 20 years. It's not quite 20 years. But you went to school at this place that you experienced harm that you called fundamentalist.
Yeah.
You didn't lose your faith.
No.
You were a theater major, is that right?
Yep. I did my graduate work in theater there too. Yeah.
And then you got an idea to study philosophy.
Yeah.
And you came and studied at Biola for philosophy.
Yeah.
Does your philosophy background help you understand what's going on with the Second Amendment and this cultural stuff?
Oh my gosh, 100%. It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't, without the philosophical background, it would take a lot of time and energy to really understand how bad the ideas are out there, how incoherent they are, and the foundation that people are building on. Because when you can understand the foundational philosophy they build on, then you can, it's more predictable of what their outcome is going to be. You're like, oh yeah, I understand why you say that outcome, because this is your foundation. If you're an anti-realist, if you are a naturalist, then postmodernism makes perfect sense. That's where it goes. So, but people don't understand that. And I think the average person is just floating around on the pop culture level. If somebody's talking about, these, oh my gosh, progressive issues, and be like, we need to stop, all the gay books in the library or whatever it is that they're talking about. It's like, you know what? That's not going to really help. You're just running around playing, whack-a-mole. You have to understand that this is a much deeper philosophy. And if you do not address the philosophy, you will not turn this train wreck around. And philosophy has really helped inform me on how to navigate it, how to make distinctions, how to stay on topic, and how to get to me at the heart of the matter rather than just flitting along from issue to issue.
The heart of the matter. Yeah. That's a really good way to say how you use Instagram. You're trying to get at the heart of the matter with each of these posts. You're like, okay, this goes to the heart, but you can't say it in just one sentence. So here's a caption. And also your concern for coherence. You mentioned belonging versus coherence.
Yeah.
And I don't think most people, I don't know. I don't hear most people go coherence right away, but your philosophical background has taught you, your training has taught you how to spot incoherence. Would you say that's fair to say?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I mean, if you go to a classic example, a simple examples of it, if you go to the Instagram page at defiant.ls, he's the one who's taken his time scouring Twitter for all these progressive accounts and then showing one tweet they gave, which said one thing on a topic.
Say it again.
And then
say the address again. Sorry, say it again.
Defiant.ls.
Okay, that's not going to take me to some kind of terrorist website or anything.
I hope not. It's named after a very outspoken progressive Twitter.
I got it. Yeah, I got it. Okay.
But he's
so
great.
That's interesting. I'll have to follow this guy.
he's totally, he's got
Make
all
him.
these.
I'll make him feel better because he's only got 53.4 thousand followers. So
Yes.
he'll probably
Well,
really notice my follow.
One of my claims to fame is I started following him when he was only at like 3,000. So I feel very proud of myself, kind of getting in on the ground level.
You did.
But
wow.
what I love about him, and he's been, marked on Twitter as being, somebody spreading hate speech. He's been, shadow banned on Instagram. I can't even tag him in posts because Instagram won't let you tag him because he's such a bad guy. But what's amazing,
he doesn't belong. He doesn't belong.
He doesn't belong
because he's so coherent.
It's the incoherence. And what he's pointing out is he's taking tweets from progressive leftist Democrats, and he just shows 2 tweets from the same guy and how they contradict each other. And his entire account is just quoting them. Wow. But he is spreading hate speech because he's quoting them and pointing out their incoherence. Now, the thing is, a postmodern doesn't care about incoherence. At the end of the day, a postmodernist cares only about power, satisfying the appetite. Belonging is part of satisfying our appetite. So wherever I can get it, however I can get it, that's where I'm going to get sucked into. Here is what's so important. A coherent life leads to belonging, because then you end up finding those people who know how to grow up and live a good life. And those are the people you want to link arms with. But if belonging is your goal first, rather than coherence, then you're going to be in a group that is super fickle and full of shame because they're like that weird codependent boyfriend or girlfriend in high school that they just cling to you all the time.
Wow, that's really good, man. That's really good. I wish I could get you to say all that again. And probably some people are saying that too, but then, okay, just go back, rewind. We have the rewind feature for that reason. And you can,
if we only knew how to edit video, we could play that again.
Yeah. Well, I got to do one foot in front of the other here. I can't even re-say what I liked about it because you said it so fast for me anyway. You said if you go after belonging first, if that's your primary goal, you're not gonna. It's almost like the person that said if happiness is your goal, you're not gonna get it. You got to go for other things besides happiness, and then you'll get happiness. I don't know.
You got it.
Reaches that, but if belonging at all costs is your goal, you're going to be very attracted to progressives. But you're going to sacrifice coherence and reality. But
that's right.
What I really linked up with, what it really nudged my heart when I heard what you said was that if coherence is your goal, you will find belonging, and it will be much healthier. Because these people respect boundaries. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And in fact, I would go so far as to say you will actually find real belonging. Because I find that those who are sucked into this belonging trap that progressives often offer, and a lot of fundamentalist groups on the conservative side, they're not off the hook. That's not real belonging at all. It's kidnapping in some ways. And you're trapped in the basement. You're like, I'd like to get out. They're like, well, you don't want to go out there. It's too scary, aren't you? It's so nice.
You don't want to be a racist.
Takes care of you.
Yeah. You don't want to be a racist, do you? Repeat after me. I don't know what a woman is. I don't want to know what a woman is. I don't know what a woman is. I don't know what a woman is. Repeat after me. So glad we're nominating a woman to the Supreme Court. That makes us so good. And look how dark she is. That makes us extra good. We're making
it's all childish.
What's a woman?
So
I don't
childish.
know. What's a dark person? I don't know. It's like, well, yes, you do. Anyway, yeah, that's great. That's great. Oh my gosh, I'm looking at one of these posts this guy does. He's skewering the latest. Okay, that's good. I'll check it out later.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole, but it's great. It's great. And it's a breath of it's just fresh air. When you see hypocrites and in some ways just downright evil people be called out for what they are. And it's like, oh, I'm so glad people are getting called out, because part of the reason there's so much evil festering in the world. It's just the same way that bacteria festers in a wound. It needs to be cleaned. We're not allowed to clean it because those in power say, hey, let the wound fester. We're going to lose our power if things are truly exposed. That's why you have all these scandals. Everybody's putting the lid on the evil so that it's not exposed. Because we have only our appetites in mind and we don't have goodness in mind. If I have goodness in mind, I have your goodness in mind as well as mine. But when power is my aim, belonging is my aim, I'll do anything I can to manipulate reality in order to meet my passions.
So let's just clarify something really quick. Somebody might be listening to this that thinks, I can't quite tell if this guy just is a hateful person and he hates gay people. What would you say? What would you say to that? Or transgender or whatever.
Well, if they were to say that, I'd be like, I don't. So, I mean.
so that doesn't stick on you.
No, you know, I don't like it because I hate being misunderstood. I mean, it's really
me too.
It's a deep gripe of mine. I hate it. And if somebody really wants to manipulate me and be an absolute jerk, then misunderstand me over and over again. And it will get
so that's manipulation, you think? That initial
100. Let's just say somebody is not intending to be manipulative. Let's say they're not.
I think that's most people. I think most progressives are like that. They're not intended. They definitely don't think of themselves as manipulated people. So that's why this talk, if they get this far in the talk, they might think that can't be me. I mean, certain features sound familiar, but
yeah, it goes. I mean, I had experienced the same thing in the fundamentalist school that I went to. It's that there's a lot of sincere people who are in the group and they're repeating the narrative of the group in order to keep the structure in place. And it's well intended. I will even be charitable and say everything that they say is sincere, but what they're saying is a lie. What do we call a sincere lie?
Lie.
That's exactly what you call it. And I would say you're not trying to do it to harm somebody, but you are harming somebody. And so how do you convince that person? It's not my job to convince them. But for me to say, look, it would really serve you well if you changed the trajectory of your life to say, I want to be open to reality at all costs, rather than I want to fit into a particular group who has somehow arbitrarily dictated what morality is and how I should live. Because these things are not based on what is real. And that's noted in the philosophy and it's been going on for 150 years.
Yeah, the folks that are, let's clarify what we mean by against the Second Amendment. Because if you read the Heller decision in 2008, there were two sides. There's a 5-4 decision. I think that the court got it right. The 5 were on the right side. They had the right answer for the most part. There's a few things in there that I would quibble with. I'm not sure why Scalia put it that way, or just unclear.
I know what you're referring to. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the dissent was written by Justice Stevens, and he would probably say this is what the Second Amendment is. I mean, it's not like I'm against the Second Amendment. It's just that I understand it correctly, and it's about hunting and it's about community rights, and it's not about. So when we're saying, and I say we because I'm on your side on this, I agree.
Sure.
One of the benefits of naming the podcast The Republican Professor is you click on it, you shouldn't be triggered by anything. I just wanted to say the word trigger in this discussion. If I make a wisecrack about Democrats, well, it should just roll off your back like water off a duck's back, because you kind of knew that. But I don't want to be annoying about it. I don't want to sit here and just do that. That's not really productive. I want to engage people and really listen. I do, and I feel like I have listened for like many, many years. And I've been misunderstood in return. And it's not a fair thing that's going on. It's very manipulative what I've seen. So I hope that comes across in the podcast. But in terms of you and me, when we say that we're for the Second Amendment, we're just to help people understand in this debate about what the Second Amendment is, we're on the side of Heller versus DC for the most part, broadly speaking. We're on the side of McDonald versus Chicago. You can take a look at those cases. You can read them. We're on, legally, that's what we mean. And philosophically, we're going deeper and we're trying to tie up these loose ends, because there's a lot of issues that are related to the heart of the Second Amendment, which is self-defense. Wouldn't you say it's about being able to defend yourself and not be
100%. 100%.
Okay.
100%.
So what the state does, and it typically is one political party, but and I could chase that rabbit trail down if you're not convinced, but it's typically, I'm just describing, I'm not evaluating, I'm just describing. It's typically the Democratic Party. There are some Republicans that are problematic on that too. They're with the Democrats, but we wouldn't have McDonald versus Chicago if it wasn't for Republicans on the Supreme Court. It was 5 Republicans against 4. And we wouldn't have Heller versus DC if we didn't have Republicans on the Supreme Court. If George Bush hadn't been president, we wouldn't have that decision. That's just a fact, because the Democrats were all in agreement and the Republicans were, for the most part, in agreement with a couple that went with the Democrats. Anyway, okay, sorry to all that, but there are deeper issues, and there are other issues that come up. For example, magazine capacity. Why 11 and not 10? Why is 11 a felony and not 10? Why I mean, regulations very well.
Very much.
Very, very much, because, well, I'm not going to say why I know that, but in California, we're dealing with background checks on ammunition purchases at Walmart.
That's right.
And guess what? Walmart doesn't sell ammunition anymore.
That's right.
Which was the point of that goal, because it's costly. These things are costly. Waiting day period in California, 10 days. That's for each time you do a purchase. Even if, and this happened to me one time. Even if you already own a gun, you have to wait 10 days. And why do you have to wait the 10 days? If you ask why do you have to wait the 10 days? It's a cooling off period.
That's right.
It's a cooling. Well, but I'm already armed legally. Well, we have to make sure we can trust you. Well, hold on a second. Why is it that it's about trust of me? Why is it not about trust of you? I mean, you're the big government. I mean, you're the huge government. How can I trust you? When here's an example. Like one time years ago, I was in a store in Central California, and it was a farm country and a gun store. And I saw this, I had just purchased for a private party, a collectible handgun that they don't make anymore. And I did the paperwork for the 10-day waiting period. And just after I had signed the paper, I saw in the little cabinet area for sale an older model of the same gun that was like 40 years earlier.
Wow.
30 or 40 years earlier, from the Great Depression. It's called a curio and relic. And I looked at that thing, and the guy told me the story, and he was like, yeah, a farmer carried that, during, John Steinbeck era.
And as a curio, you don't have to go through the same background checks, I don't think.
No, you do. So
you do.
I had to do an additional background check for that too, even though it was only merely seconds of a difference in the system.
Yeah.
But that's how ridiculous it is. It's like, it's so ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. And you have to pay fees for that. And you can just see it's about getting money, and it's abusive. It's like, you're not treated as an ordinary person. You're just treated like some kind of weird. And so that you got the 10-day waiting period. By the way, a great case to read on that and I'll give a Democrat a compliment here, is a district court judgment. Sylvester versus Harris is the name of it when it went up through appeal, because Kamala Harris was the attorney general, but the earlier version was Harris versus Sylvester versus I want to say it was Becerra. Well, actually, wait, Becerra came after Harris. Whoever, it might have been Harris. I think it might have been Sylvester versus Harris at the district court level. And it was a Central California court. And that, the reason I say you can go and Google Scholar and find this. You can go to Google Scholar, then hit cases in federal and just put Sylvester versus Harris and look for the district court judgment. And it was a Democrat federal judge, and he had a trial on the 10-day waiting period, and he had collected all these facts, and he wrote this really thoughtful opinion. He was a Democrat. He was Clinton appointee, and he said, this makes no sense. The 10-day waiting period makes no sense when you look at the reasoning, what they say the reasoning is, and the facts. It's incoherent. It's totally incoherent. And it's all laid out there for you. And then the Ninth Circuit basically did not pay attention to anything he said and said, no, it does make sense. And then reversed it. So that's why we still have the 10-day waiting period. But my point is, we have the what is an assault weapon, and we have, before that, they were trying to ban handguns, and we have the handgun roster here, and on and on and on. And there's all these issues that crop up. Conceal carry. So I just named like 5 or 6 things. They all sprout out of this issue. So your approach is very cool because you're getting at the heart and the coherence issue of what all these issues have to have in common. Meaning, once you get at the heart of the Second Amendment and the deeper issues in the Second Amendment, what's going on there, you're going to be able to figure out very easily and coherently which side is correct on magazines, on background checks, on waiting periods, on what's an assault weapon, and whether should there be a handgun roster and what's that really all about and stuff like that. So I wanted to give you that compliment.
Thank you. It comes back to this coherent life, which should translate into coherent laws. And then when you have a society that has to live according to incoherent laws, it creates disorder for an incoherent life. When you're perpetually having to jump through hoops of a legal system that is always calling you names, treating you like a second-class citizen, maybe we can use Jim Crow even as an example, it creates a much larger obstacle to live a good life in society when you always have that abuser pushing you back into incoherent forms.
Would you say that racism that you just mentioned, the segregation, would you say that was abuse?
Absolutely.
Would you say that's boundary crossing?
Absolutely.
Can you say why, just so that we help us understand how that relates to the Second Amendment?
Well, it would relate because everybody's a human that we're talking about. And then humans all have equal access to live out their lives in a coherent way with each other. So when you have segregation for who sits on buses, especially when we're talking about the public sphere, or who can drink from water fountains, who's allowed to get a job, who can get a loan on the house. And the reason you are choosing who goes where is because you think one person is less human than the other person. Obviously, it's abusive. And abuse is a demoralizing of our humanity. It's a dehumanizing enterprise. And Jim Crow is dehumanizing, and we know that. But California's firearm laws are deeply dehumanizing, and we know why they pile on with all these incoherent laws. We know why that's a strategy. They want to get rid of all of it. They want the supreme power of the land to be only the government and whoever can vie for that power. As long as they can do that and get everybody else to keep complying within the system they want to make in their own image, They're going to heap on law after law after law and create as much havoc and fear as possible so that you won't exercise your moral right in their presence.
What do you say to people?
It's very psychological.
Yeah. What do you say to people who look over at England and places in Europe that have, in terms of self-defense laws, being armed for self-defense against crime, they have a very different system where the state is much more intrusive and powerful.
That's right.
What do you think? If people looked at that and said, why can't we have that over here? They seem to be doing fine. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say just because the outcome of fineness, whatever that fineness means to somebody, doesn't necessarily mean that that fineness was arrived in a moral way. You could look to East Germany as well. Look how ordered everybody is. Look how quiet the streets are. Look how everybody shows up to work on time. The communist dream is all happening. Everybody lives on so little. Isn't this a blessing? Isn't this fine? But the truth is if the people in England were so good and so loving and so nurturing to each other, then why would they having firearms change anything? Because they wouldn't use them in any way that would violate another person. What those messages tell me is we don't trust each other at all, and our distrust has grown substantially to the point that I do not want you empowered at all. And then when you go down the list of all the disempowering things that happen in these, European tyrannies called democracies, you see that the taxation is really high. So your work is disempowered, your firearms, your self-defense is disempowered, your education is disempowered because so much of the resources go to that and you have fewer choices for yourself unless you're really wealthy, on and on.
Yeah.
Your transportation disempowered because they want to regulate what are considered normal means of having energy so you can move about and move freely. Some people might be like, well, that's okay with me. It's okay with me. It's like, that's fine if that's the life you choose. But it's not a fine life. That is a controlling, manipulative life. And that's
if it's chosen for you, in other words.
Yeah, if it's chosen for you, then you're living an incoherent life.
Yeah,
because you need to make the choices. It's up to you to make good choices, not up to the government to make them for you. Granted, there has to be boundaries. I think governments are instituted among men so that we can have life, liberty, and property. But as soon as government starts treading on those things, government is no longer government of the people, by the people, for the people. It's its own new entity, which is behaving in an abusive relationship.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that was great that I mentioned England and you went right to East Germany, and you're saying, no, hold on a second. This is actually this is the spectrum it's on.
Exactly.
It's not on the American spectrum. It's on this East German. East Germany is, well, West Germany is not really that different than East Germany in that sense.
Not anymore, is it? No. Their buildings
no.
are more colorful. I visited East Germany back in the late 80s with my family, and it was dreary and eye-opening. The toilet paper felt like sandpaper. I was like, wow, this is the utopia of communism. Isn't it wonderful? But
they had a wall between East Berlin and West Berlin. You were in Berlin, or
I did? I was not in Berlin itself, no, but we were in East Germany, and I think it literally was the year before the wall fell. And if you see the movie Lives of Others, which we may have watched that together somewhere along the line, The Lives of Others, it's a powerful movie about the Stasi police of East Germany.
Okay.
And how they manipulated and controlled and surveyed the people. And I don't see it much different than how our own intelligence agencies have turned against our own people, always digging up dirt, always using what we have, even things that we can't even talk about on this podcast.
I know.
Because we live in an era where there are such extreme abuses that you can't even speak openly and freely in public without some rogue person wanting to beat you up because their little cult said it's bad for you to talk about these things, or the government showing up with guns. I mean, we live in a violent society and it's built into the system. And that's a major, major problem that we're not addressing because we're so busy addressing the talking points that are on the campaign trail rather than the deeper questions of how do we live a good life, because it's not happening, people.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, there does seem to be a very low attention span, and it's caught up in trying to keep up with the news, but the news is so fragmented that it's very difficult to piece together a coherent picture. And and by the time you're done doing that, you're so exhausted that how do you, I mean, someone listening to this might be like, okay, I see where he's going. He's not a hateful person. He's not racist. He doesn't hate whatever, and he's got some good points, but then maybe I'm discouraged because you just said he studied philosophy as a graduate student. I don't have time to do that. How do I level up on this? Is that what your website is designed to do?
Yes, partly.
Tell us about your website.
So the website, it's in process. It's supposed to be done soon, but the primary emphasis will be the archives of what I create on Instagram. And I think that the average person, if they were to visit there and scroll through the archives, which would just be my little explanation under each image, I think a picture will form.
The images will be there too?
The images will be there. And I'm hoping it has a feature where you can hover over the image, and then the caption will be easy to read. So you don't have to leave the page. You can just hover over every picture and read quickly.
That'd be cool.
I think if you hang out long enough, an image starts to emerge that at the end of the day, we have a fork in the road and we have to choose. Am I going to be a realist? That is, I want to be informed by reality. Or am I going to be an anti-realist, which means I will shape reality to fit my passions? A realist is one who is seeking after real morality, real science, a real God, real relationships. And an anti-realist says, it doesn't matter what the science says, whatever's going to give me the power, that's what we're going to do. It doesn't matter if there's a God or not. If I just say he is there and it gives me power today, great. If I say he's not there and it gives me a sense of relief today, that's great. That's the fork in the road. And the progressives have widely chosen the anti-realist perspective. Sometimes it sounds like a realist perspective only when it benefits them for power. But left to themselves, it will perpetually be what St. Paul said 2,000 years ago, the struggle of the flesh and the spirit. And this flesh will win because the appetites are what guide the progressive movement.
Are you pro-science?
What's that?
Are you pro-science? Are you against science, Dale?
I am pro-knowledge, and science is a discipline to arrive at knowledge. That's, to me, is the safest way, the best way to say it.
Are you following the science?
I always follow the science. I want to follow the best we have, getting at the reality of things. I don't care when science becomes politicized, it's all about who's the spokesman, right? But when you can move the spokesman aside and say, I want to get at reality. What exactly is a virus? How is it affecting people? And the data of how it's affecting people, that's the information that I want. I don't care what the spokesmen say. They might be right, they might not be right. But if I have to just follow the spokesman, then I'm more of a postmodern anti-realist because my authority is now based on a person and their agenda.
That's huge what you just said.
Yeah. And today, in this world right now, it's huge.
You just connected the last 2 years to the Second Amendment. So you're saying you see connections in the deeper issue of the Second Amendment with what happened in the last 2 years with the virus?
100%. Absolutely.
And the spokesman thing really rang out to me, like what you just said about you following science versus following a spokesman. I think everybody knows what you're saying about the spokesman. But how do you follow the science though? Isn't it about just believing what the authorities tell you? I mean, I can't do the experiments. I just have to trust them, right?
That's the big joke, isn't it? They're like, well, are you a scientist?
Well, but it is kind of true though. I don't know. I don't have that expertise. So that's why we hire people like that so how do we have let's say that I'm someone that's with you over 50% right now. So, I'm now listening more carefully to you, let's say. And you're speaking to me like, okay, hold on, this guy's not crazy here. I feel something here. How do I think for myself? How do I not just trust? Because I do want to belong, but I don't have anybody. There's nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
also,
Mm-hmm. On the day-to-day level, sometimes it is difficult when you look around you and you're like, golly, I'm surrounded by a bunch of dysfunctional people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that part of our quest is to hold on to ourselves. I think of Rudyard Kipling's poem, If you can keep your head about you when everyone else is losing theirs, then you'll be a man, my son. And I think that if we can hold on to ourselves and be having the conversations that matter, I have found over and over and over again, I start touching and finding those people in my community or online that care about those things too. And I start seeing how belonging fits into all of it. But nobody wants to belong to a needy person. So we long for belonging, but as soon as we become needy, then we're like a little leech onto somebody else saying, I need you to give me purpose. I need you to make me matter. As soon as you do that, you're just a little codependent addict person. We have to grow out of that. So maybe that's what therapy is necessary, and reading books on how to grow beyond your codependent family and whatever it may be that trained you to move in those directions. But I think that learning to hold on to ourselves and having the conversations that really matter to us is a part of moving into the wide open space. And it's hard to know who those people are going to be. You can't just say, I need everybody who wears, who carries Louis Vuitton bags. That's my tribe. It's not the way it is. When you start moving into healthy places, you'll find the goofiest people out there are also moving into healthy places. And you're like, wow, I would never have expected this guy or this gal would be my friend. But they're moving in the same direction I am. And I have to rearrange. I don't need a friend that just looks a certain way or talks a certain way or is in the in group or the popular or whatever. I need a group that can I need a person and friends that can plant their feet on the ground, who are growing to become more mature, and that can stand with you in times of crisis. But that's a gradual process of building up friendships around you. But you have to start yourself to say, I need to get healthy, and then you'll find healthy people. I understand. And sometimes
so it starts with that. It starts with saying, I want to get healthy.
I want to be healthy, and I need to go find, where do I put myself in positions where I can find other people who care about these same things. So somebody might be a Second Amendment person, might say, I want to join the gun club down there. Not because I want to be interested in guns. I just want to go to their meetings and start to get to know people with this mindset. Maybe I want to join a certain political group that's happening in my town, or join a church, or just float about at different churches and find ones that say, I'm resonating with health here. I want to get to know more people in this. In some ways, the structures are kind of built in to our communities. And so it gives us a head start to maybe find people who have the same interests we do. You might find one or two people in there that actually do want to grow more, and people you do belong to, but it takes time and you have to give yourself that allowance.
Now, if someone listens to this and is with you about 60% maybe, and they're thinking, okay, I'm not quite sure how to be healthy. I don't know what that means. I think truly codependent people, or people with the traits, maybe full blown, or people with the traits, think it's very difficult to change. I'm not sure that somebody that's got full blown codependence can change. I'm not even sure they can see it. Even with therapy. Even with therapy.
Maybe they can't, but I think, yes, I hear what you're saying.
I don't mean to make you sad, but I just wonder.
Let's not go to the people that have no hope. Let's not talk about hopeless people.
Okay. So your Instagram posts are not going to work with them. I mean, unless.
And then that's not my audience. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
A book that was really helpful to me and it's an older book, but it was The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck.
Yeah, you've mentioned that to me before. I
It's
didn't.
awesome.
I
And it's
threw it away
follow-up.
because it didn't have any pictures. And it didn't have any pie charts, and it had no facts. Like, it had no statistics that were in
Yes.
picture form. I mean, maybe the words had them in there technically, but I mean, so
I'm
most of
telling
my
you,
Bibles I've thrown away. Thank God I still have the children's Bibles with the pictures, but even
thankful.
then I ripped out the pages that didn't have the pictures. So
Yes.
I have like, I have some of the Bible. I think I have the Christmas story because they had the picture there.
Well,
And
you're very accomplished for being only a visual learner. That's quite remarkable.
well, I appreciate that. If a typical Bible had some pie charts, had some scatter plots, and just some facts, some statistics, then I would be able to trust it better. Wow.
That's how you know it's telling the truth.
You can tell. I need my coffee. Well, this has been a great conversation, and I think you've just given us a lot to work with. I think it's going to take some people a long time to process this stuff.
Absolutely.
Which is fine. And you're in this for the long haul, right?
I'm in it for the long haul. Whether I do it publicly or not, I don't know, but it's the trajectory of my life. If I can't live this out in my private world, I can't do it in public. So everything I share in public is stuff that has been brewed and tested and thought about in my private world. I want to be a coherent person.
Okay.
And so that's what I want to bring to others, because the gift of being able to connect to reality is the most remarkable freedom we know. No matter how many guns or no matter how much free speech you think you have, when you can connect to reality and you're growing into the human person you were designed to be, that is freedom.
So we have Voice of the Second Instagram. They can find you there at Voice of the Second, and the second is the letter 2, the number 2. Sorry, let me make sure I spell my numbers right. And they can see your work there. Are you going to link your website and stuff there?
When my website's active, it'll be right there.
Is there anything else you want me to mention about your work where people can find you?
No, that's my only place right now, is right there.
You're not on Twitter or
Shadow
anything?
Band. What's that?
You're not on Twitter or anything?
No, I tried. It was just too much noise and vitriol. I feel like I can kind of control some of that noise on Instagram better than I can on Twitter and Facebook. So
okay, why I didn't ask you, why are you not on Facebook again?
Yeah, I used to be on Facebook. I mean, I've documented thousands of conversations on there, and I eventually deleted my account. But I got off Facebook because of the noise. And when I got on there, it was just perpetual distraction and information overload. And Instagram allowed me to kind of control it and contain it in one narrow place. The conversations can be shorter. We can get straight to the heart of things if people leave comments when we have dialogue. And the expectations are different. People are here to let me just chew a little bit. Let me just have a morsel each time, rather than getting too ingrained into who are all my family connections and all my friend connections and this wide thing that has nothing to do with the stuff that we need to talk about when it comes to freedom, liberty, humanity, and the Second Amendment.
Okay. Well, hopefully it's up there a long time so that people listening to this years from now don't come to this one and go, wait, I can't find it. Damn it.
I've been duped.
Damn it. Well, thank you for joining us from New Hampshire at Voice of the Second.
Thank you, Lucas.
Stop recording now.